And we're recording.
All right, we're going to call to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Moving on, we have our approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from January 13th, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 13th meeting.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Moving on. Approval of the general fund vouchers 82023 through 82095 and wire transfers 2025-0240 and 2025-0270.
I move to approve the general fund vouchers and wire fund transfers as read.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And public comments. Eve, do we have? Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, now I'm really nervous.
Yeah, I know, we're right to public comments. So with public comments, you have the right to address the board. Just know we will probably not interact, but you have the right to bring forward your issues. Okay?
My son has been being bullied at the elementary. I have talked with Teresa, I've talked with Chris, I've talked with Dale and the classroom teacher for months now. It has gotten better since my last conversation with Chris, but that's because we have snow, and so Emmett is playing in snow and not playing football with the boys. He's had bloody noses, he's been pushed and shoved and tripped into cabinets, and I want this to stop, and he's kind of helping by choosing a different place to play now that there's an option, but the cameras that were purchased don't see those areas. The recess aides aren't picking up on this, and since we have a policy against bullying, I just want to bring this forward as to what we are experiencing. And this is hard to bring this because I am also a district employee. But I do see and hear other things around the building that I don't agree with. And so it's not just an elementary problem, it is a high school problem and a middle school problem. And I feel like we need to be addressing these things and holding these kids and parents accountable. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions from the board? Okay, we appreciate you coming forward. Switching gears, our introduction to our 2025 valedictorian and salutatorian.
Perfect. So at the end of the first semester every year, so in January, we take a look at our seniors, and it is the highest GPA at that point and second highest GPA at that point who become our valedictorian and our salutatorian. And this year, February is always great because I get to introduce the two individuals to the board, and this year I'm very excited and proud of the two young ladies that I'm going to introduce tonight. Both of them take their academics very seriously. Both of them work very hard every single day in the classroom, have a desire to learn, have a desire to achieve at a higher level. Both have some great plans moving forward that I'm going to have them share with you tonight. But to introduce them, our salutatorian is Lily Anderson, who is the daughter of Teresa and Brian Anderson, and our valedictorian is Haley Zoft, daughter of Angie and Andy Zoft. So congratulations, ladies. Congratulations to the parents. And ladies, and Haley, Haley, I know you're going to love this, but if I could have both of you stand and just, if you want to just fill the school board in on what your plans are for life after high school. Haley, do you want to get us started?
Sure. I'm going to go to UW River Falls next year to major in marketing communications.
Nice.
Lily?
Is it okay if I stand back here?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. I plan on going to UW Eau Claire in the fall for elementary education. And despite what you may think, it is not actually because of my mom's position. It is actually in spite of her position. For the longest time, I thought, I need to do something different than my mom. And then finally, like, after spending time with kids through mini clinics and my Ed 8 hour and just various different things, I realized, I really do love this. So I'm really excited to kind of come back into a school situation. So thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And Lily, kinship played a role in that as well, correct?
Yes.
Awesome.
All right.
So you guys have
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congrats.
Congratulations.
Great job.
And every year, we talk about the fact that to be the valedictorian, salutatorian, to maintain that high grade point average. That's a story of consistency over a long period of time, and that takes not just intelligence, it takes grit, it takes hard work, it takes character to do all those things. And so it's always, as Mr. Melberg says, it's always a pleasure every year to have the individuals come forward, because it's just, to see, knowing the students the way we do in our small district, knowing the types of, character that they have and the hard work that they put in over time is just a real testament to those individuals. So congratulations.
May I make a comment? Lily got all of her smarts from her mom.
I think they already
That's recorded.
Same Make that clear.
I was going to say that coming from that guy who ripped his shirt off at wrestling.
That's recorded too.
That's recorded.
A
couple.
This might be the school board meeting to listen to. So, because
All right.
I like the details, what are the high GPAs? So we say high GPA, but what does that mean?
I don't have the exact number, but I know
Okay.
both of these ladies are over a 4.0.
Okay. Just if anybody listening is curious, that's what it takes.
Above a 4.0.
Nice.
So that means AP courses.
And we typically have to go down a few decimal points to determine first, second, and then third and fourth as well. It's
Mhm.
usually very competitive. And this year, just as much, and quite a few with over 4.0 this year, which is pretty impressive.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ladies. Job.
I'm going to steal this group just if we're to go.
Yeah, go take a picture.
Yeah, and I'm going to
Yeah.
steal the rest of the group.
Yep,
for the
and then I'll
future
meet you guys
reference.
down there.
In front of books at that was good.
All right, so while he goes and takes a picture, our next agenda item is the board tour of the Clear Lake High School Technology Education Classroom and Lab.
Okay, yes, we're going to go take a little field trip. I'm going to pause the recording while we head down to Mr. Larson's classroom and lab. Recording again.
All right, so we just had a really nice tour of the Tech Ed facility, so thank you to Mr. Larson and his students for giving us some demos. And we will move on to the next order of business, which is the approval of resignations and retirements.
Okay, so as the board knows, we have February 1st, if we have teachers who qualify for the local early retirement compensation that Clear Lake offers. And so we went through that season here of February 1st, and so back in January we got 3 retirement letters that I'll share here. So first one is Andrea Jillick. She's retiring as Title I teacher and reading specialist. And the next one is Todd Jillick. Mr. Jillick, a math teacher, been at the elementary for many years, been at the junior senior high here for the last third year. This is the 3rd year. And then also we have Becky Stahl, kindergarten teacher. So Mrs. Jillick, Mr. Jillick, and Mrs. Stahl are all planning to retire at the end of this school year. So
And the years of service to officially retire for that retiree benefit is how many years?
15 years.
15 years.
15 years in the district, and 55 years minimum age. So.
Okay.
So I've got those three. I don't know if we want to do them separately or just do them all together. We've got 3 retirements. I got a couple resignations for other things too. Or how the board wants to.
Let's approve retirements first, and then we'll talk through resignations. That's
Okay.
okay. If I can get a motion.
I move to approve the 3 retirement letters.
I'll second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. All right, so we approve the
With,
retirement letters. Now we'll move to resignation
Yeah,
letters.
and just also mention, many thanks for many, many years of service between the 3 of them. And at the end of the school year, we will have a retirement celebration for all of our retirees of all the different employment groups, and we'll look forward to honoring their time here in the district at the appropriate time there. So congratulations to the 3 of them. So yes, so next, we do have some resignation letters. We have Rihanna Larson, high school math teacher. She is resigning from her position effective at the end of the year. And then we also have Sheena Yedis resigning from her position as dishwasher at the high school in the kitchen.
Okay.
End of the year also.
And no, that is actually going to be effective. I don't have the exact date, but she put in a 2 or 3 weeks notice. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, it'll be this Thursday, according to the letter.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, do I have a motion to approve the resignations?
I move to approve the resignations.
I'll second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. And then we have one issue for closed session.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, there's a request for leave of absence.
Okay. And we have no approval of hires. Approval of the spring coaching roster.
Okay, so you can see we pull up the document. And I just put a highlight on the people who will be new this year in their position. So with baseball, Scott Pedersen was a 5th grade teacher this year with us. He'll be the head coach for baseball. That's new. And then also as of late last week, Lynn Case accepted to be the assistant baseball coach for the high school. And then we have 2 new softball coaches as well. So Eric Morrissey, a few months ago, was selected as the head coach through the process. And then April Riniker will be the assistant coach. So those are new. We have 1 new track coach as well as an assistant. Josie Wood just agreed also to be an assistant coach in track. Otherwise, no changes for the other positions for track and golf.
All right. Do I have any questions or a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve spring coaching roster.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. We have a spring coaching roster. And then, moving on to the strategic plan scorecard review, portions of Pillar 1 students and Pillar 2 with staff.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to the principals here in a second. But yeah, so the portions of Pillar 1 that we're going to look at are specifically the academic achievement and growth scores. And then for Pillar 2, I'll do mostly that because that mainly comes on the district scorecard. But we'll talk about the state interview process and just talk more about what that strategy is and just some of the work that's been completed related to that. So I guess we'll start. Well, I think I've got the documents all down below, so you can pull up the different scorecards, the PDFs, and I think we'll just kind of go in the order that they're in. If that's all right, Mrs. Anderson, if you're ready to go. So we've got the elementary scorecard first, and just remember, so this is the mid-year check-in, right? So we're looking at leading indicators at mid-year for some of these items. So fall, we set our goal for the spring, and then mid-year is kind of the check-in on how are we doing with progress towards the goal. So, Mrs. Anderson?
Yes. So if we look under foster high levels of learning for all, you'll notice in the mid-year column it looks a little more complicated than it did previously. This is due to our Act 20 mandate that the state has required a different screener to be used called Ames Web Plus. So that is for this January screener was kindergarten through 3rd grade, took a completely different test than what the FastBridge was. And instead of having them test in FastBridge just to get a score, we definitely assess to use the data. We don't assess just to see that growth. So really the baseline score for the reading, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we will see that from mid-year to end of year. So our FastBridge scores from the fall for kindergarten through third grade really cannot be correlated together. And again, you can see that there's some different grade level bands in the fall that are different than the mid-year. So this is where I feel like it's just kind of a fresh start for reading, and we'll definitely see some different data that we can compare once we get to that spring data test. Math is consistent. We're still using FastBridge for math, so we can see some scores there from our fall to our mid-year. Notice that first Foster High Levels of Learning for All, we had set a percentage of students that are going to meet that benchmark, and we have done a little bit of stoplighting there, which is some of the color coding on how our progress is going. Again, it's by end of year that we want to reach those goals. We spent January 20th on that in-service day as a data day to dig through all of this and make plans and how we're going to implement interventions for students that are not reaching that benchmark. Questions on Foster High Levels of Learning for All?
Thank you for the colors.
Questions on the Act 20 stuff? And again, just to review, remember that was a law that was passed so that it requires the change in the screener. So every school that wasn't using Ames Web already, which is a lot, is going through this same process of having to switch screeners mid-year, which is, not ideal, but working through it.
And we also changed curriculum too, correct?
This is our first year with an HMH into reading resource. And we did have a consultant working with us today from CISA, so we're consistently, getting better at that. But yes, tomorrow's a new day that they have not seen in that resource. So definitely, and I've already talked to Mr. Peterson about getting some consultants for summer work, so year 2 can feel a little more steady and foundational than year 1. Looking at the promote growth goal, again, that K through 3rd just kind of parceled out in a sense. So if you look in that middle column, it's the same little parentheses from above. EL just means in the Ames Web Plus platform. It's called early learning. ORF for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd is oral reading fluency. So the child is reading for 1 minute and the teacher is documenting what words they're miscuing, what they're inserting, what they're, just not even reading, passing over, and taking notes on that. So having a 1 minute timed read and ORF, an oral reading fluency, is really an indicator of success. So that's what those letters stand for. And then again, the 4th through 6th grade kind of is now standing on its own, so we cannot really correlate our fall to our mid-year. Wanting to decrease the number of students, you can read the goal, scoring below that 30th percentile on the reading portion by 5%. We used FastBridge. Notice the italics under that goal, and this is where the platform itself gets a little difficult for us because kindergarten through 3rd grade, Ames Web uses the 25th percentile. We cannot adjust that. So we would have to find any students in the 25th to 30th, grab those out, recalculate. So we have looked at the 25th for Ames Web. FastBridge does do the 30th, so that's just a bar graph. We can grab the scores rather easily. And then math is a consistent where we can compare our fall score to our mid-year. Questions on the promote growth goal?
Okay, thanks, Mrs. Anderson. Mr. Melberg?
Give me a second to get there. So I'll start with our junior class right at the top. So if you remember our lagging indicator for our freshmen, sophomore, and juniors is going to be the state mandated ACT test in the spring. And a couple of years ago, to help us with that progress, we purchased CERT, which is basically it shows kids, it gives them an actual ACT style test with the timing, and it gives them a predicted score of what they would get on that ACT. So we've used the CERT the last couple of years as our leading indicator to what we will score when we actually take the ACT, or when our juniors take the ACT in the spring. So on the left-hand side, it's broken down in that table. The 2024 score is what our juniors scored last year on the pre-ACT as an average score. So we took the same group of kids, moved them forward to juniors, and said, okay, this is what you got as sophomores. Now we want to increase those scores by 6% your junior year. So 2024 is what their average was as sophomores, and the 2025 goal is what we're hoping to achieve their junior year. So and then if we go over to the right where you see the fall and mid-year check-in, the fall scores are listed from when we took the CERT test in early September, and then the mid-years is when you see the color-coded when we took this just a few weeks ago in January. And you'll see for our juniors, we're right on track. So yellow is we're within 2% of achieving our goal. Green means we've already achieved our goal. Nice win, even though we're seeing a lot of yellow and one green there, but also we're seeing growth in every subject area, and then obviously with the composite as well. So we feel pretty good with where we currently are with our juniors. Also, I would say when we did the CERT testing, it's not fun. I talk a lot with the kids about it. They don't get excited about doing it, but last year it was, some frustration on their part that we're doing this, and this year, especially when we took it in the winter, was more of this is what we do, and this is what we do with the scores, and kids are talking about their scores and talking about the growth that they had. So we're in I feel like we're in a really good spot as far as the CERT and ACT and pre-ACT testing goes. If we go down to the sophomores, same thing there. We carried their freshman scores forward, and then said, okay, we're gonna try and increase your freshman scores by 6% as a group. And so you'll see their 2024 freshman scores, 2025 goal, their fall testing scores, and their mid-year testing scores. Similar to the juniors, we're right there, and we're seeing growth from the fall to the winter. We've achieved that goal already. Hopefully we can maintain that when they take the pre-ACT in English, and we're within 2% of achieving that goal in each of the other categories. So excited about that. Scrolling down to the freshmen. The freshmen, we can't go off of previous scores. There's really no correlation between the forward exam that they take in the elementary school and junior high, and then the ACT and the pre-ACT. So we kind of have to start fresh with them. And so we set a goal of achieving whatever the state average was for the freshmen the previous year. So the entire state of Wisconsin takes the pre-ACT. What's listed there is what the averages were last year. We want this year's freshmen to achieve those, and then each year we'll try and increase that by 6%, their sophomore and junior year. You'll notice some major jumps here for our freshmen. So in the fall, you see their scores there, and then if we can maintain what they did between fall and winter, every indicator is that we're going to achieve these goals and be ahead of the state average with our freshman group. One thing, and we talk about this a lot, is when the freshmen come in and take that CERT test the first time in the fall, this is the first time that these kids have taken a timed test. I think all of us grew up in taking tests in their classrooms. None of the tests that were timed. The forward exam is not timed, so that throws the freshmen in the fall. They see that little timer going, and they're going, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so it takes some coaching to kind of get them through just some strategies to be okay with what's happening. And so it's pretty common, or has been common for us to see a big jump between the fall scores and the winter scores with our freshmen. It's just they get a little bit more comfortable with the assessment. So, but we're hoping that we can build on that and jump those up even higher. Going down now to our 8th grade and our 7th grade class, our goal is to increase their test percentile rank by 5% over their 7th grade scores for our 8th graders and over their 6th grade scores for our 7th graders. This one's a little bit different. The CERT and the ACT is really nice because the CERT tells me if I take it today, what my predicted score on the ACT is if I were to take the ACT tomorrow. So it's really straightforward. Now, we know that when you take it as a freshman in the fall, that we've got a year of growth before you take it in the spring. So we should see some growth there. Fastbridge does it a little bit different with our junior high kids, and that is they're giving you what their predicted score is as a fall 8th grade student. And then if your score stays the same in the winter, what Fastbridge is saying is, yeah, you're maintaining the appropriate amount of growth. And so you don't see that jump like you do with the CERT with the ACT, because they're factoring in the growth that you should have in a half a year of learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you look at our 8th grade, basically they maintain the same score, which tells me they are growing at the rate that Fastbridge would tell us they should be growing at. Our 7th grade scores, if you look there, we've got a couple of red numbers there. We went backwards a little bit between the fall and the winter, which tells me we're not growing as much as we should at that time. It also tells me that it's 35 7th graders, and it could have been the way the wind was blowing that day, and they weren't focused. So we're doing some things to test that out to see if that was just a one day and we were off, or if we've got some issues that we need to address and try some different strategies. But also, the CERT and ACT, there's a direct correlation. Last year, we were within a half a point overall of what CERT said we were going to score and what we actually scored. Individuals were off a couple of points here and there, but the class overall was within a half a point. We're using Fastbridge as a leading indicator more or less because I don't have a good leading indicator option for the forward exam like I do for the ACT. So we're looking into some options. In fact, we're even debating bringing CERT down to the 7th and 8th grade level so we get some more data that directly relates to the Wisconsin standards in each of the subject areas. But nonetheless, we didn't get the growth there that we were hoping to get, or that we thought our strategies would get us. But at the same time, if we go down to the last one there is promote growth. This is the area where we're focused on our struggling learners, and we're trying to decrease the percent of kids that we have in that lowest category, or that's below approaching, which is the basic. We want everybody at approaching or above. And so you'll see that we move the needle on some of our struggling learners in every category. So in the high school, we went from 37% of the high school was below that approaching mark, and after winter testing, we're at 23%. So some nice jumps there. And then with ELA, this is our 7th and 8th graders combined, we dropped that 1%, but they also had a smaller number there. And then we dropped a couple of percent with our 7th and 8th graders in math as well, which got us to our goals. If we can maintain that on the Fastbridge test, on the forward test at the end of the year, we'd achieve that goal as well.
What kind of strategies are you using to move that needle?
On which group?
On those lower.
So for the middle school specifically, we're using win time. So every week, every kid in the middle school is getting pulled a minimum of 20 minutes for extra English and 20 minutes for extra math. If you're not in band or choir, you're getting 40 minutes extra of both of those. And we're grouping those kids on what they need. WIN stands for what I need now. So we're grouping those kids basically based off of the scores that we're seeing on Fastbridge, so that when we have our group that's below approaching, we can put some strategies. Both Mr. Jillick and Mrs. Niles are using strategies in there to help kind of build some of those lagging skills. And then at the high school level, same thing. We take the CERT exam, and then the teachers take. Typically, it's usually a half a day. We pour through the data, and we start to group kids and put strategies. They put a plan in place of the strategies they're going to use between fall testing and winter testing in their classroom to help bridge that gap and build some of those lagging skills. it's been a strategy that we've seen growth. 2 years in a row now, we've seen growth, so I think this system is working, and I'm just hoping that we can maintain that.
Looks like it's working, so.
Any other questions?
All right, Mrs. Powers is going to talk about the special ed and pupil services scorecard.
Maybe a little bit to get to my scorecard. So for the foster high levels of learning for all, for the elementary, where we said they had the Ames and the Bassbridge, discrepancy. Even with that, looking at our students in 3rd grade through 6th grade, I didn't get to count any of the 3rd graders because Ames just doesn't correlate. But even with not including the 3rd graders in that, we grew 17% in reading for our students with disabilities, and in math, I have it highlighted yellow. It should be red. I think. We dropped a little bit from the fall to the winter, and that's where the teachers are looking at different strategies. Again, they're in all of our special needs students are in winning groups over at the elementary also, besides having their time with their special education program too. So they're kind of getting some double duty on a lot of things for them. So working on that. In the junior high, reading dropped a little bit. Some of that, and I think for both in our junior high, we've added some new students that weren't there in the fall, that we've had move-ins, and we've had some people that have qualified, so that has skewed some things. Same thing with elementary too, a little bit. And then in math we did a nice gain in math in the junior high for our students with special needs. And same thing when you look at high school for the CERT. We had an increase. We had an increase 20%, so that was nice.
One of the things you guys will note about those scores is they're more volatile, bigger swings, because it's a real small cohort group.
I look at who I'm going to have for juniors that are going to actually take the ACT, because we have a couple kids that will end up opting out. We're going to have like 4.
So it's hard,
it really makes a difference whether they make it or not. We have such lower numbers than everybody else. So then if we look at the promoting growth, what I had done in the fall was I let you guys know, like when we looked at the kids 3rd through 8th grade, students that with disabilities that were above the 5th percentile, we really wanted to look at the kids that were under that 5th percentile and really work on getting that increased. We had 48% in reading and 72 in math. And then mid-year, looking at the Ford exams looking at the Fastbridge exams at that, again, I had to discount the reading portion for the 3rd graders, so we went down a little bit there. And we went just down a little bit in math too. But even though we went down in both of those, I look at, of our kids in those grades with disabilities, 14% of them had 6% or more growth from fall to now. And then same thing with math, 14% or more of those students had 6% or more growth. And then in high school, we talked about wanting to reduce our high school students that were scoring below an 11 on the pre-ACT or the ACT composite score. And in the fall, we had, looking at Fastbridge and things like that, or we're looking at the ACT and pre-ACT, we had 31% of students that were above the 11th composite score. Now, looking at CERT and looking at the predictors of that, of our students with disabilities that were above the 11, For their composite score, 80% of them were above an 11 for their composite score of our students with disabilities from 9th through 11th grade. So that was really nice to see. And so that means that we had 20% of our students who had 6% growth or more between their fall scores and their winter scores. Make sense?
Okay. Do you mind? Okay. So if you pull up the district scorecard, and look at pillar 1. So, you know, it's the same assessment at the high school, CERT, and FastBridge at the middle school, and so on at the element, but just maybe looking at the data, interpreting it a little bit different way. Instead of looking at just the raw score and the raw average score, we looked at the percentage of students that are at benchmark or above. And again, I'm sorry, this is under promote growth, so I should back up. The foster high levels of learning for all, for the district level scorecard, we just look at the forward exam in the fall and the spring, so there's nothing to look at in the middle of the year. But for promote growth, I should say, we've got the CERT test at the high school, and so you know, we set percentage growth, you know, try to move from 14% to 24% in the math area and 43 to 53 in ELA. And so in both of those areas, you can see that they're green as far as the stoplight goes. And then with middle school, again, the test that's used or the assessment is FastBridge. And again, you can see for math, there's modest growth there too. But again, keep in mind that the benchmark from fall to winter to spring continues to go up. So by simply just maintaining, you know, you would actually have a negative score. So you actually have to show growth to have that increase. And you can see that the ELA score is basically, I would say that's flat. You know, there's no change to that. You're talking about one student or less than one student when you're a change, you know, a student moving in or out when you're talking about a change of 1% like that. At the elementary level, and again, as Mrs. Anderson said with math, it's FastBridge for both fall and winter. And so there's actually a comparable there. And then for reading, with the change in the assessment from, you know, FastBridge in the fall to Ames Web in the winter, you know, it's not legitimate to stoplight it because you're talking about two completely different assessments. One of the things that is notable, if you guys recall, we'll look at the AGR data later, the AGR report later, and we know every year we see kindergarten have a really high score in the fall in reading, and then in the winter it drops way off. And we've noted that it's consistent, so it's like it's something to do with the assessment, you know. And then we noted that when they did Ames Web now, that wasn't the case. So, you know, it's an example of how no assessment is perfect, and every assessment has its own unique qualities to it. And I think the point with all of this is, you know, we dissect all these little percentages. The point with all of it is, as somebody said at the beginning, what we do with it, you know, and it's about teacher teams looking at it and breaking it down and looking at groups of students and saying, okay, what standards are these students not achieving and what can we do about it between now and the next period. So that's what this is really about. But it's important for us to do this exercise to check in like this because it, you know, causes us to keep our eye on that important ball. So then the second part of our scorecarding or our scorecard review is in Pillar 2 under staff. And that's only appears on the district scorecard, so I'll be the one to talk about it. So in the fall, so last spring we did our surveys with school perceptions, and we used a lot of that really powerful data to help us write our goals for the fall to spring. That's not an assessment that you do more than once a year. In fact, you might do it less than one time a year sometimes. So our strategy was, for the mid-year part, you know, we talk about leading indicators, right? So this is something to give us some data, a check-in midpoint through the year to say, where are we at? Are we making progress on our goals with staff engagement? And so if you'll recall, the strategy that we are doing this year that's a new thing is called the STAY interview. So you know, you've heard of exit interviews, and I know that over the years the board has even talked about doing exit interviews. You know, hey, find out why is an employee wanting to leave and so on. And, you know, those aren't real effective at that point. So the STAY interview, the concept is to, you know, talk to people when they're here, not when they're leaving. And to, as I said with some of the people that we sat down with, is just talk about things that we never take time to talk about. You know, it's a check-in. So we'll talk more about the strategy. So if you go back to the agenda, and if you click on the second to last document, it says copy of stay interview process. And just to, again, familiarize everybody with what the process is, we developed this in the fall. And we just laid out these parameters of, okay, who are we going to do a stay interview with? And we laid out the parameters. So, you know, any new teacher who's in year one, it's just kind of worked into their regular frontline educator effectiveness conversations, but also teachers who are on supporting year two, so meaning the third year of their cycle before they get their next summary. And then for support staff, first year, any support staff who's in their first year, or people who are in their off year of their what their evaluation is. So we're not doing a stay interview with everybody every year, but it's just on a schedule like that. So you'll note back on the scorecard, we had 21 people across the different teachers, support staff, between the different administrators that we identified as doing a stay interview, and started doing them in January. And honestly, the focus was, initially we were talking so much about the focus not being on the teachers because that's the largest group. And so as we got closer to the scorecard, and we realized we haven't done our support staff once. And those of us that had support staff people to do have just been doing them in the last 2 weeks. So that's why it says there's 19 out of 21 stay interviews completed. There's 2 remaining, and they're scheduled to be done in the next day or 2. Actually, they would have been done if it's not for some illness and things like that. So, but just wanted to be transparent about how that is. So the check-in is just more like the fact that we're doing these, and then also, you know, we talked about who would be the person to do the stay interview, when does it happen here, and we identified this midwinter, and we had, you know, it ended up being more of a process talked about in December, January, finished up here in February. And then if you note, there's a link there, the stay interview form, or if you look in the agenda itself, you can click on the stay interview form. So this is just the 5 questions that there's simple questions to ask. Just, you know, what aspects of your job have you found most fulfilling working here in the school district? What aspects of your job have you found most challenging? How would you describe the support and resources provided to you by the school? What suggestions do you have for improving the working conditions for current and future, whatever inserts a job category? And then what are some future professional goals that you would like to share? And so then we send out an email that the administrators put together explaining it, and then send out the questions ahead of time too, so that people have actually time to sit and think about their answers and be thoughtful about it, not just feeling like they're caught on the spot, not sure how to answer. It's been a very, I think all of us would say it's been a very rewarding experience, you know, to have those conversations. And again, it's like just taking the time to sit down and talk about things that we don't often just take the time to talk about, you know, just to check in. How are things going? And so we'll, you know, take that information and look for broad themes, you know, both things that are identified as strengths and things that are going well, and things that are challenges that are identified. And certainly we'll analyze that and use that to help us drive what we do with employee engagement. So, but it's been a good process, I think. So I don't know if I left anything out that anyone else wants to chime in about that. Any of the 4 of you?
I would just say 5 questions that lead to many other conversations too.
Mm-hmm.
After they come in, and the conversation kind of goes in different directions, and learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
It's a good process.
So the themes that you come back with, are those going to get shared with the board, or are you just keeping those at the administrator level?
I mean, we don't want to, I think it'd be more of a,
theme is a high level, like
as long, I think we just want to make sure that people feel like they can come in and be authentic and share without feeling like it's going to be shared publicly what they said. But yeah, I think the board should see, you know, we can put it together.
I'm just thinking if you talk to 21 people and 21 people are saying scheduling or student behavior, like what are the challenges? I mean, even if you took top 3 out of each question to give a better idea of, as a whole, what are we dealing with?
Absolutely. And also, what are the things that people
Well, what's going right?
like too is,
Right.
what are our
I
strengths?
just happen to be
Yeah.
staring at challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's our nature, is we always look at the challenges, right? Because we always want to fix it and do
Fix
it
the
better.
problem.
Yeah, make it better.
I think I'd like to see what comes out of that.
Is there
that
any
that's for the
trends
public, but
that you're seeing?
So we've each kind of had our own, and we've talked about we need to get together to, because I definitely saw trends in mine that we
Mhm.
want to share and see if we're seeing trends across, for sure.
Yeah. It's fun, actually, to look
Yeah.
at that.
Okay.
I think that is everything on the scorecard check-ins. If anyone has any other
Mhm.
questions?
Okay.
All right.
Now we get to move to something even more exciting. Approval of property liability and workers' compensation renewal.
Okay, so I'll just give a little intro, and then that we'll table that deeper discussion to closed session to look at the bids. But just, we put out for bid our property liability, auto insurance, and workers' compensation insurance for bid this year. It's been a number of years since we've done that. So, I reached out to other districts and got feedback. Sent out queries to multiple firms, had 3 express an interest in providing a proposal, and then received back 2 of the 3 turned in a full proposal. One of them at the end kind of didn't complete it. But again, it's competitive bid, so we'll table that part to closed session, I think.
Okay. All right, getting a little more exciting. Going to consideration and approval of a new high school course proposal.
I will turn this over to Mrs. Johnson, and Mrs. Johnson has an introduction to make as long as she has the floor as well.
I'm gonna scoot out first.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thanks for letting us pop in. I do have a shadow tonight, so I would love to introduce her. I'm going to let her do most of the talking, but I actually got to have a student teacher this spring from River Falls going into agricultural education, which is why she's paired with me, obviously. But this is Miss Gillis, and I will let her do her own introduction.
Yeah. Hello. So I'm Rose. I'm actually from the area. I'm from Deer Park, and I went to school in Richmond. Actually, like half of my friends all went to Clear Lake, because we were all in the same 4-H group. Currently in my senior year at River Falls, studying agricultural education. Going to graduate in May, finish out the semester here in June, and so far loving it. I started the semester with 2 sections of plants, animals, and you, and those have come with challenges and amazing parts. And then actually today I picked up 2 more classes, 2 sections of small animals. And my background is animal science. In fact, that's what I originally went to college for. So I'm really excited to start picking up the more sciencey classes.
She's been a great addition to this time here. The kids love her. I've given her some sass, which means she's in, which is good and bad. So working through all of the fun of being an educator, but it's been a joy to have her so far. So I'm excited about the semester. But I'm here, and I believe you all have a copy of my course proposal. And honestly, depending on how much you've dug into it already, I also included my syllabus, which has my little header on the top. That is probably the easier document to look at as far as what this course is versus the course proposal document. But what I'm looking at is adding a new class, Plant Science and Wisconsin Crops, and this is a dual credit class through CBTC. They have worked with me to dual credit the horticulture class that I already offer, which is a little more high level as far as looking at the industry trends. What are we doing with the crops that we grow? What do we do with the plants that we grow? And how do we use them? And then Plant Science really dives more into the science of growing plants. So what is the actual function of a plant? How do they use their nutrients and things like that? You can see all of that on the document, so I won't get too technical. I don't want to bore you. But it gives a lot of options for our students, and it was fun to hear you guys talk about the pillar conversation, because this, in my head, really fits in pillar 1 when we're looking at the, and I will quote it so I don't get it wrong, but encourage future goals, especially connecting our students to that college visit and our job shadowing, because with this we do have a connection to CBTC for college visits and actually workplace shadowing directly if they would like. And it's pretty cool. 2 weeks ago I had our registration gal Jen come in from CBTC to get the kids set up for horticulture. The next day I had a kid that was like, they have a radiology program, and she's actually going to go and do a college visit there, checking out that program. So already we're seeing the fruit of that, and so I'd just love to give an additional option for our students. So if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
We also, if you pillar 3, our family and community partners, one of our goals is to increase participation in those dual credit courses. So Mrs. Johnson already has one that's in place with horticulture that she has added CBTC credit to, and now proposing this one would give us one more offering for our kids to gain college credit while they're taking high school classes here.
One additional thing that they shared with me kind of after I had gone through was they had a neat story to share. This plant science credit was offered to a high school, and they had a student that used that transcript, transferred it to a UW school, and they actually counted it as her science lab credit because it is 1 credit lab, 2 credit lecture. And so they kind of started asking some questions, and it sounds like the UW system would count that. It definitely counts as an elective pretty much anywhere that will take it, but they can actually use it for their science elective depending on what their major is. And so that was pretty exciting for me to hear too. I was like, anything that you don't have to pay for when you go to college is always great. So.
Any questions?
Good.
Okay. Seeing none, we need an official motion and approval on this one.
I move to approve the new high school course of plant science.
I second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations, ladies.
Thanks.
Job taking the lead on that.
Yeah. Next up, consideration and approval of spring dual sport participation option.
Okay, Mr. Rosine's gonna present. Take one for Greg too once you get an extra.
Oh, I didn't give you. I give you the same one.
Yeah. It's all right.
All right, well, I guess.
Feel free to sit.
Yeah, I'll stand. Hopefully it doesn't take too long here. But shortly after I was hired, you guys asked me, or kind of charged me to look at the ever-ending question of offering dual sports in Clear Lake. At that time, I was instructed to put together a committee, bring a proposal to you, so we kind of laid out a timeline. So that's what I did. Created a committee. You see the committee members there, kind of included all of our spring sports, a few parents that have been involved in our athletic programs, and also some former, you see Sarge, former AD, and then Mrs. Prusak, former head track coach. Then I had added Seth Amundsen, who was a former coach in track, but also he's getting his administrator license, so he wanted to be part of the process too. So you can see the timeline there of trying to get a committee together. Our first meeting was November 9th. And then at that meeting, what I did prior to that meeting was, I think I had about 6 different samples from high school, somewhere around here. Bruce and Grantsburg probably the closest, but then I found some online, just some samples of some schools that had offered dual sports and seeing what they had for kind of their guidelines and their contracts. So at that 9th meeting, we kind of made a list of, let me start by saying I took the kind of the philosophy of we're not going to debate whether we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. We're going to bring everything to the table, because we could have 16 meetings on whether we should or shouldn't and try and get everybody on the same page. And so I told them, I'm like, no matter what, I'm going to bring a proposal to the board in the spring. So let's try and create something that you could live with if it was proposed and passed. However, everybody's going to get a voice, and at the end of this process, whether you would support it or not support it. So we'll get there. But so we first kind of made a list of pros and cons, trying to get everybody to understand everybody else's viewpoints, and then took the samples, read through them, looked at them, and I kind of selected one that we kind of wanted to use as our base, and that was actually Grantsburg's their dual sport guidelines and kind of their contract. So we took theirs, and we kind of talked about the pros and cons, what we liked about everything, took some things out, added some things in there, and then through like kind of several emails and drafts, kind of got to a spot where we were comfortable, held another in-person meeting where we read it from top to bottom, and then made another minor adjustments, and that's where we're at now. So then last couple weeks ago or so, sent a survey out to all the committee members and said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, and that's that pie chart, or the sheet there. I said, okay, so where are you at, the bar graph. On the scale of 1 to 10, where are you at with your support level for moving forward, your comfort level on adding dual sports? And we were pretty frank that even if we do it, our idea, at least that's what I got from the board meeting in the last fall, was that you want to pilot it for the spring if we were to accept it or come to an understanding. So with the understanding, okay, so this spring it's going to be kind of a pilot style program to see how it works. All but 2 I got responses back from the committee members. Both those 2 verbally said that they were strongly in favor of it, but you can kind of see where everything kind of slants to the favorable mode. With 1 being a 2, the rest 5, 6, 7, a few 8s, and 3 10s out of the level of support, how strongly they support it. And then I kind of wanted to get an idea on what is their thought process of whether they're supporting it or not supporting it. In majority, and I kind of spaced them all out there, but competitive teams, and then building strong programs was kind of the 50% of, or half of the committee's thought process of why they would support it. And then I got to if you flip it over, I got to the end and I made them get off the fence and I said a yes or no. And that's where you can kind of see the overwhelming response from the committee members is yes, all but 1 giving it a try. The one no is a former coach that kind of had lived through it and seen it kind of go through 20 years ago, and saw some of the growing pains. And she had expressed, yes, it looks good on paper, but there are some challenges with it. But you can see for the most part everybody was willing to try and come to the consensus that let's give it a shot. Now Brian and I did not participate in the survey. We talked about it before the meeting here, trying to come up with a recommendation. And the thing is, I don't think him and Brian and I are strong one way or the other. There's definitely some challenges that are going to, if it was approved, that we're going to see, but then there's also, some opportunity that, you never know. I remember being a baseball coach when I was with Mr. Blanchard and, seeing Matt O'Connell do track, and he was our only youth baseball pitcher for however many years, and I sure would have loved to have had him do dual sports. So I understand that part of it. I know that there's some definite benefits, and I know that there's some definite challenges ahead if it was to be approved. I think you guys all have a copy, right? Yeah, so, and I'm not going to go through the copy, but I'll definitely answer any questions, kind of going through that.
Have you had any discussions with coaches, how they feel?
So all the spring coaches were on that committee. So I think track is probably the hardest one, because you're giving up some time, and you're always kind of nervous about sharing. When time is limited, especially spring. Spring it's a hard time to get practices in. Like baseball and softball. As soon as the field's dry, they're playing games, and you're not doing a lot of practicing. Same with track. Spring is different though. If you think about it, of all the spring sports, there's a lot of individual. There's not individual. There's not a lot of game planning. Like basketball, if you're not in practice, you're missing game plans. You're missing, some plays that they're going to run. Baseball, there's fundamentals. Track, there's fundamentals. Golf, there's fundamentals. So I think it's easier to be done in the spring. I think it's more challenging to be done in the fall or the winter.
I just know, like, I was probably 5-10 years out of school the last time and had heard about it, so
yeah,
that's why I asked these questions.
Yeah, fire away. Yeah.
Prepared? You think we're prepared?
If we're prepared to do it? Yeah, there's going to be challenges, so I contacted some of the area schools and just to see, one, do they offer, two, if they have a copy, can they send it to me, and if it's also working, like what's their feel, and there was pretty split, but a lot of them said it works for the right circumstance. It has to be the right person, it has to be the right set of coaches. This isn't something that's going to, 10, 12 kids are going to do. This is going to be less than a handful of kids that are going to try and make your programs tie some key positions or strengths, but it's not going to be a lot of kids because it's very hard to do.
Just looking at it, it looks like an administrative nightmare.
It is, yeah.
Like, if you actually read through it, my other question is, because we're still part of the Lakeland, is this the right time to do it? Because if numbers increase, are we even going to have JV options for softball or baseball? I mean, we're not getting them in girls basketball right now.
Yeah, no, they yes.
Because the athlete that does the dual sports is going to knock everybody down, because it's typically probably going to be your athlete that can do both. Mm-hmm. So then what happens with everybody else who goes down the ladder? Are we going to end up with a group that now they're getting 0 playing time and no JV options because we don't have that?
Yeah. Actually, I talked to the new softball coach today about he had a sign up and about numbers and about how JV looks. How do we get JV games? And right now he's sitting at he said right around that 18 to 20. And he wishes he had a couple more, so he could. So you look at it. Okay, so if you add a couple more, can you go 2 places in one night and send a team somewhere else? So he was looking at it as that as a possibility, because because I'll be honest with you, the worst thing you can do is have developing kids not getting any playing time, and it's hard. So there's 2 ways to look at it.
Yeah.
And I see both of them. I really do. I see, but in the back of my mind, I keep going back to myself. I'm like, but hopefully it's only a handful of kids that it's the right fit for. But
Is it right for the majority, though?
What's that?
Is it right for the majority of kids?
Yeah.
That's what you got to ask yourself.
Yeah.
If it's 1, 2.
Yeah, and I also look at it as programs, though, too. If doing this allows us to play a JV game, then it's worth it for the majority.
I think some aspects we'd be more competitive.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah.
But
With that one player that can make a relay team into a viable relay team or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm even thinking like your example, if you have 18, it'd be really nice to have 20 for softball. This could push you into like,
It could do the opposite.
yeah, it could do the opposite of what I was just saying.
Yeah, that's a JV schedule.
If you didn't have it, then you're sitting with 17
Right.
girls, let's say, and that's a lot of people on a bench
Yes.
when you can only have 9 on the field.
So, yeah,
it sounds like you're ready for that.
it's definitely a challenge.
I can say too, like I've seen it over the years. I've been here a while now too, and I've seen this is the second time, third time that I've seen it come up, and it tends to come up every so often. And I feel like we're at a point where there's been enough talk about it among coaches, youth coaches, development, where it's almost like we need to try it because I think we need to just see and if in a year or two from now they're all saying, hey, this is a disaster, nothing's permanent, and I think I like the fact that there's been a lot of thought put into there's a lot of checks and balances in here, and it is an administrative jumble, but I think you're going to be talking about a handful of kids, and it does allow the coaches a lot of authority to say, is this working or not? Is it causing team strife?
Yeah.
Is it causing our issues? And I think Mr. Rosine mentioned with them about how it could cause a student who says, well, I'm going to play both sports and I'm going to start at both. Well, you might find yourself a reserve at both because now you're splitting your time and you're not doing as well at either sport. So there's just a lot to it, and I think I think people just aren't going to know if they want it or not until they've had a chance to try it. It's kind of how it's feeling right now.
Is there any academically?
We thought about that.
Academics tied to?
No, because it was one of those we weren't sure how to monitor it.
Right.
So you hate to create something that you're not able to police it, or that's kind of a nightmare. And with hopefully a handful of kids are going to be the one. They're a struggling athlete or struggling academic student is probably not going to be hardworking and determined enough to try 2 sports. But
Seeing where our enrollment's going, I'm all for it. I mean, you don't want to hold any kid back either if they want to try and do track, baseball, or so. I mean,
I think my bigger concern is the interactions of the students.
Yeah. Well, that's.
I don't know if I see it as on the boys, but I live in the girls' side, and I think if not properly done, this could create some ugly situations.
That's why we got him.
Yeah.
The coaches. We have to trust the coaches to monitor that.
They're coming your way.
Yeah.
We have to trust
the
coaches to deal with that.
I'm leaning.
And you've got some new spring coaches. That's.
I'm leaning.
I don't want to
what you
ruin
put
them
together here.
with this either.
Sounds like you've done your work. So. Any thoughts?
I'd say we try it for a couple of years.
Thoughts? I agree.
And to be clear, Dale, so this is piloting it for the spring sports only, right?
I was just going to go there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, last fall you had said, hey, let's come to a proposal. We can do a trial run in the spring and see how it goes. It's up to you guys, obviously, if you want to make it just clean cut. This is policy, this is not policy, whatever you want to do, or you want to say, okay, after 1 year, come back and we'll kind of revisit it.
And just so I'm clear, it's spring sports only?
Well, that's
what it. Because you ain't going to have a basketball player and a wrestler or football, cross country, maybe?
To be honest, I think the schools that have it do it for all, just because it's hard to say, only spring. Mm-hmm. But they said the practicality of any other season is very rare, and they've never seen it, but you can get a kid in cross country you can kick.
Right. Or
we were trying
play
to think
soccer
of,
because
there's no way, like I said, a team sport like football and basketball, when you're going over game planning and you're out there to practice, that doesn't work.
I just wanted to make sure I understood.
But that's up to you guys if you want to just try this, spring, come back this summer and see how it went, or just make it policy, and then we'll kind of deal with it as we go. That's up to you guys.
I say we try it for the spring.
Yeah, and see how it goes. If it goes good, and yeah.
It doesn't hurt to check in the summer and decide what I want to go forward.
Okay.
How do you feel, Ryan? You've been inside the walls and
For a while.
yeah, got it. Yeah.
You're involved in the track program.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's, on the track side, I don't think it'll be an issue as far as the dynamic, because
Right.
times and heights tell you who can do what,
Yeah.
right? So that's pretty cut and dry as a second athlete coming in going, hey, I'm gonna be a starter. You know, if time ain't there, you ain't starting. You know,
Yeah.
you run that relay. It's pretty easy to say that, but on the team side, with golf, I can see that being, yeah, that's gotta be tread lightly, I think, so.
It gets the numbers for baseball, and kids can still do track, softball.
There's definitely a couple athletes that can handle it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's all I got.
All right. Do we need an official motion?
So, do you want a motion it just for spring trial? Is that
Yeah.
what we want to do?
I think that's where we ended up.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve spring dual sport participation option.
As a trial.
As a
spring
trial.
Spring
yes.
trial.
Yeah.
Okay, can you restate that, Corey, just so we have it?
I will approve or make a motion to approve spring dual sport participation trial for 2025 spring.
Do I have a second? Second. All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. On to the review of the Achievement Gap Reduction, or AGR, report.
Okay, so Mrs. Anderson will do this, and you're going to hear a lot of this. You know, we just talked a lot about academic scores, so I think, you know, this will be some similar information. But this again is the mid-year check-in. So, Mrs. Anderson.
Yes. So we received funding for what is called the Achievement Gap Reduction. This was established in 2015-2016. It replaced what was called SAGE, which is a Student Achievement Guarantee in Education. There are different strategies. This fits grade levels 3rd to kindergarten, and it's to, what we often think of it is keeping student class sizes to 18 students to 1 teacher, but there are other ways that you can be in compliance with the AGR, and that would include instructional coaching for teachers and one-to-one tutoring provided by a teacher. Our history has been largely keeping our class sizes 18 to 1. The data presented really is no different than what was, it kind of matches well with our strategic plan chatter tonight. So all that's required to report to the state at the end of the year is kindergarten through 3rd grade. But if you notice on the final page, I did include the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade as well. Again, 4th, 5th, and 6th doing all fast bridge for reading and math, so those scores do correlate. K 1, 2, 3, fast bridge for math, but then we switched into Ames Web, which is noted by what's in parentheses, kind of the new test that we have given.
Okay. Any questions? Moving on, review of the January pupil count.
Okay, so you know, we do the 3rd Friday in September, we take a pupil count, and the 2nd Friday in January, we take a pupil count. And so then that was sent in. It was due late in January. I can't remember the exact date, but there are 2 documents attached there. So the first one is the spreadsheet that we use that just shows how many students are attending here in each grade. And remember, this is what's known as, they call this the head count. So this is actual bodies in seats, whether it be in person or virtual. But those students are all counted here, and you can see the chart breaks down by male, female, and students with disabilities, students who are open enrolled in, how many students are open enrolled out. You have all that data, so it's always interesting for us to look at that. But so credit to so we get together and we have Mrs. Labrie from the high school, Mrs. Roble from the elementary school, and then Mrs. Blanchard, who is the open enrollment secretary. And the four of us get together and we go through and we complete all this. We look at all the data of all the students that we have in our buildings. And then the second document is what actually goes to the DPI. That's the DPI pupil enrollment report. So the first document is head count. The second document is enrollment, and they're two different things. So when you consider enrollment that we send to the DPI, you start out with that head count, how many bodies and seats, and then you take out the students who are non-residents, meaning open enrolled in, you subtract those out. And then you take the students who are open enrolled out and you actually add those back in because they are residents of your district. And then what happens is the districts exchange dollars for, we get paid money from districts where we have students open enrolled into us. We pay districts that students are open enrolled out. So that's the number that really goes to the DPI. So according to that, our number is 552 students is our enrollment count. And as we know, that number has declined. We're in a steady decline mode in the last several years. And right now we have our three largest classes are the seniors, juniors, and sophomores. So as we've talked about quite a bit, we're going to see a jump down, a step down each year for the next few years, and then things will level off. But we'll level off at a new reality for a while, and then we hope to climb that back up in the mid-range, longer range future. So, if you scroll down to the second page of that second document, it compares January to last September, and so we did gain 4 students from September to now. So that's a good thing. So I don't know if there's any questions about that. It's pretty straightforward. I will also note that just last week we found out the glorious news that we get to do another membership audit. So what that means is that we get audited and they go through all of our documents and verify all the students that, how did you count them, and they auditors come in and they look at your open enroll in and out and all your documentation, making sure that your numbers are accurate. So it's part of it's luck of the draw, and so we got it last year, we got it again this year.
So your luck's not great.
I guess not. Luck of the draw is not great.
Yeah.
So it's not that terrible. It's okay. So any questions about pupil count?
All right, then moving on to the update on the audit report.
Okay, so at the last meeting, we reviewed our financial audit for the 23-24 school year from Baker Tilly, and then as is typical every year, they note in there our deficiencies, which have to do with segregation of duties because we are such a small business office. And so we have situations where it will happen with the same person that makes deposits or withdrawals and handles into the bank, also as the person who then does the reconciliation of the bank account. So ideally, if you had a bigger staff, you could have a separate accountant who could do those kind of things. So the board had asked, and it's been a number of years since the board has talked about this, and the board said, hey, what would it take to get rid of those audit deficiencies? And so you charged us with investigating that a little bit. So the first document on there, I can kind of walk you through it. So this started, the day after the board meeting in January, we emailed Baker Tilly and said, hey, this is what our board wants us to look into, and we got kind of an initial response, and then we sent more information to them, and kind of kept and I got very specific. Basically, we're looking for, if we were going to hire somebody, how many hours, looking for their help on what would be the scope of work, how many hours per month we're probably looking at, and year-end, yearly tasks that you're asking, or that you're saying, would eliminate or reduce some of these deficiencies. What would that take? And so real specific. And they're very busy, obviously, so it took a few weeks. So we actually had our Zoom meeting last Friday, right down to before the meeting here. So I took notes during that meeting. Eve was part of that meeting. Eve and I met with them and a couple, leads from Baker Tilly, and it was a really good conversation. And we shared with them that our understanding that the intent is just to be able to answer to our constituents, to say, hey, what would it take to eliminate these deficiencies, and then the board, as it says in the audit report every year, do a cost benefit analysis of is that worth it for the gain that we would get. So I did write a comment. I put in quotes that she had said is that we're doing better than most with the processes we do have in place, and they mentioned some of the things like that we have our the superintendent reviews the bank reconciliations and signs them every month, and reviews payroll every month or every pay period and signs it. And the fact that we have our board treasurer reviews all of the vouchers every month at the board meeting. Those are just extra checks that we do that they said are positive things. They said some districts don't have that. And it's not just school districts. They also do it, municipalities and counties, things like that. So they also did note, and this was something I didn't realize, she said if we remove those deficiencies, it does not impact our financial position as a district. So it's not like we'd get a better rating, a better bond rating if we did that. So that was interesting. That was new information to me. But they talked about kind of the two different areas. One would be the segregation of duties. For example, having the same person post and reconcile the accounts. And I finally flat out asked, I said, okay, what percentage of districts, have that deficiency? And she said, I currently work with 10 districts, 10 out of 10 have that. And some have more deficiencies than Clear Lake. And she did say too, if you did introduce another party, another person in the process, it would still be listed. It wouldn't be eliminated. It would just be reduced from a material weakness to a significant deficiency, which is still, it's a downgrade of the concern, but it would still be listed as something that's there. And then we talked also about the idea of having someone else prepare the year-end financial statements, because currently Baker Tilly does that for us. That's part of the process that they do. She did say that, like Clear Lake, 90% of schools do that. They have someone else prepare their year-end statement. She said pretty much 100% of the municipalities and counties that they work with have someone else do it. She said, really, I can only think of 1 or 2 clients in all my years that hire someone in to do it for them rather than having the auditors do it. And she did say too, if you wanted to hire someone to come in and do your year end for you, she said if they made errors, it's still on you. It still reflects on your organization. So something would still reflect as a weakness for Clear Lake. The person who would do that would need to be an accountant, and they would need to have knowledge of government accounting, like schools and federal funds and stuff like that. And also that not many firms would be able to come and do this without kind of doing their own mini audit, so they could verify that their statements are accurate with what they're doing. And she said, if we did have someone else besides Baker Tilly come in and prepare that year-end financial, it wouldn't really reduce their costs that much. She said we still have to do all these checks and so on, so it wouldn't be that big a cost savings on our current audit bill. And then I did press a little bit and say, okay, how many hours a month, how much rough cost, and I've got it listed there for you. And they couldn't do it for us, but I just said, let's say you, hypothetically, we wanted to hire you to do it for us, what would we be looking at? Obviously they can't because they're our auditors, but they said anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a month to reconcile bank accounts. She said going rate would probably be about $200 an hour for an accountant to do that. So we're looking at $2,000 to $3,000 a month, $24,000 to $36,000 a year. As far as having someone prepare financial statements, she said you're probably talking at least about $5,000 a year, and perhaps likely a little bit more because of the other things that they'd have to do to go with that. So so being pretty conservative, very, very rough. They said in that $30,000 to $40,000 or mid $40,000 range. So that was what they were able to share. from Baker Tilly, our current auditors. And so, and I don't know if the board wants to, further explore that, because there are local accounting firms that we could reach out to say, hey, given these parameters to do this work, what would it cost if we wanted them to actually do a proposal? I don't know if the board would like us to do that, or take this information and say
40,000 to save 1,000 and still be efficient. Is that what I got out of that?
Be a no for me.
Okay.
That'd be a no for me.
Need to make sure I'm on the right track.
So.
I feel like the answer is no.
Okay. I think we should continue as is. Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were going to go the other way.
They did note that, and to note as well that, there's no fraud, there's no, they never uncover any, certainly they'll uncover minor mistakes, which they'll uncover with any audit, or something dated. We had it dated in a different fiscal year than it should have been, or something like that, and then we go and reconcile that and fix it, certainly. But, they're not raising any concerns about what they're seeing. They said our audits are good. They said you guys do a good job, and so.
I appreciate the time you took to do that. And,
I feel like we sent you down a rabbit hole. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
It's good to know. I mean, I was curious too to know like what, we've talked about this on and off over the years, so it's good to know.
But I'm glad you enjoyed it. Moving on to the review of the highlights of the WASB State Education Convention.
Okay, so so Nettie, Matt, Corey, and I all went in January. Very good again. Just kind of quick takeaways. We want to just each share just like 2 or 3, 4 highlights or whatever. Or you want to go around the table?
Sure. I guess the biggest one for me was getting to sit in the delegate assembly. One of the interesting things I thought was up there on my priority is the decoupling of public and private school funding. That actually got voted down. Entail what they're trying to do. These private schools don't want what we send to them and shows up on our budget for the year. So they wanted that removed. They think it'll help, and that got shot down. So it will be on there, and that transparency should be on there for all the people listening. And I encourage them to look into that and understand where some of your money is going.
So the funding of private schools that's actually coming from taxpayers.
They think by removing it, it's going to do us a favor, which it don't. I think people need to be aware of what's going out. Yes. So that was one takeaway that I thought was good for me. I've known that. I enjoy sitting through that and seeing where some of our public school money goes. So that's one big thing I had. So other than that, same old. Sat through some WIA stuff. Kind of got up to date on where it's going with the NIL in high school sports. Issues like that. I don't think we're seeing them quite yet, but I think it's coming. So yeah, other good breakout sessions. But the main one was public school funding. I just wanted to put it out there. So
thank you. Nettie.
I guess the 2 for me would be local report cards. I know the DPI just came out with their state, our school, but how to do local report cards. And I think with all of our strategic information, we're getting some really good information. And along with that, a new thing they're calling redefining ready. It's what does ready really mean for our graduates these days? To go along with that, and Chris and I talked about that a little bit. 2 districts are doing that, or 2 CISAs presented on that. And the other, I went to a couple AI workshops, and basically really around how teachers can use AI and to save time and energy and individualized learning. The samples they did were incredible. And what they could do, it's here.
We got to adapt to it.
I guess I would love to see if we could send some people to Milwaukee this fall to their summit and just see how we get on this, because it's the new calculator, it's the new computer, it's the new book. When books came out, it will be here fast, and I think we need to train our teachers on it and how they
I
can
sat
use
through
it.
that same stuff with
So I
you,
went to a
you know.
policy one and I went to a more hands-on one.
Right.
So I was pretty impressed with the individualized learning.
It's
in a
not
different
cheap.
topic.
We just gotta figure out how.
It's a tool,
Yes, and
right, that can be
these
used.
kids in school now, that's what they're gonna be doing 10 years from now.
Mhm.
And we got to adapt.
I was impressed. And not that we can ever be a Milwaukee, but I think there's a way to help our staff and to help our students.
Yeah, it was impressive. Podcast creation. I mean, you look at kids wearing earbuds, they could be walking home listening to a podcast about their assignment. I mean, to me, my kid would
Yeah,
eat that
it was
right up.
definitely a keyword I heard a lot.
I think the textbook publishers need to be more worried. That's what's gonna get eliminated.
It's not gonna be
AI.
textbooks
Mm.
anymore. Yeah. So just those two things were really good.
Yeah. Matt?
I think there's a few things that, you know, what she said about, I can't even remember what you just said. There was a key point, but I did see, I went to one about career readiness. Yep. The career readiness, just the whole view of what career readiness looks like now to a student now than 5 years ago or way beyond. The next 10 years are just what they're looking for career readiness is not, it's just a completely different thing. You know, they're mostly looking for more like the critical thinking, the creativity, the digital literacy, things that contribution. You know, it's one of them. Somebody put it as, you know, we've got knowledge in the palm of our hands now. We don't need knowledge as much as we need the skills. And as far as just soft skills, you know, it's completely going to be different. The demand is going to be for those people that can really have that critical thinking and just stay focused and just have the leadership skills is really going to be huge. Getting into the future needs, and so I went to one, you know, really about creating that portrait of a graduate, and kind of like what we did with strategic planning. They're sitting kids down and they're sitting career people down and saying what is it we're looking for out of a graduate, and then they're creating posters out of that and creating a whole community. You know, business. They're getting their businesses involved and just creating a whole community mindset around what is a graduate, you know, nowadays. And so that was pretty cool. Lodi, they presented a concept of like they had as part of their strategic plan was they had 5 things that a teacher can complete in order to, within a year, in order to get their wage increase next year. And things like going to, you know, attending a PLC, or one of them that they were really was exploding for them was connecting their classroom with a career. Again, you know, bringing somebody in to present twice within a year, you know, connecting with a business partner within the community, or some type of career person, and bringing them into the classroom and connecting and using that connection. And they actually they found over 2 years, they've created 200 connections with the business people within their small community. They don't, you know, I don't know, they're probably a lot larger than we are, but they consider themselves a small community. And, you know, those kind of, you know, we've talked about community connection in the past, and it looked pretty neat the way they're connecting that, the dots there. they're also taking it and creating a career day where kids can come in the fall and learn about careers, and then in the spring they have an employment day where these businesses and stuff are actually coming and offering jobs to students for the summer, and also kind of creating that community relationship. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then another one that just kind of really stuck out to me was what was it called? A teacher apprenticeship program with a club for students to actually do some teacher apprenticeships. Then they could actually get class credit for it, where they worked a semester as a kind of like a teacher's assistant. It also included some kinship buddy program with that too, and connecting with they have a Best Buddies program where they connect that with a special needs or special education buddies, and then they also connected that to the Rising Club, which is like it's a competition club where they go once a year to a state competition. They create a lesson plan. They present that lesson plan. They do some. They connect it to growth mindset. They connect it to lifelong learning attitudes, and those kind of things. And then that Rising actually has a connection to a lot of colleges too. They have Rising Club in each of those colleges, and most of the colleges within our state, that they can take it from there into hopefully learning to be a teacher. So I thought that was a pretty cool program too.
Chris, anything?
Just quick, I went to also went to sessions on AI, compensation, finance. But one, every time you go to a conference, you kind of have that one that pops out to you. And we're as part of our strategic plan, we're trying to work on our communication plan. And I went to a session where a district and a partner shared about their school marketing, and it was just kind of like none of the information was super new. But it was just like, it was the right place, right time for me to hear that message again, to just kind of help get my mindset and get our, work that we're doing here this spring and summer on our communications plan. It was just a great little boost for that. So that was my a lot of good stuff, but that's one highlight, I'd say, for me.
Okay. Review of the April 1st, 2025 school board election timeline.
Okay, so again, just we only have our one incumbent running for unopposed at this point here, so we've got no primary election needed, and the spring election itself is April 1st, and then we'll have the canvassing committee tentatively scheduled for the 3rd, that Thursday afterwards, and then the timeline, the board meeting in April is when elected board members take their oath, and they officially become seated on the 28th of April, and then the board would have the board reorganization meeting in early May at the May meeting. So just a review of the timeline there. Just want to keep the conversation out there. Remind everybody there's an election coming April 1st.
Okay. Moving on to board policy updates and approvals, the second reading.
Okay. So yeah, we did the first reading on all of these. Back in January, I made a note that policy 8510 wellness is on there mistakenly. So that we did not do a first reading on that. It's a long story how that's a little drafting error on my part, but that's not something to put forward for approval tonight. Last time too, there was a question about policy 2131, which is called educational outcome goals and expectations, is whether or not, do we have to have this policy? And I don't know if you pull it up in front of you or not, either way, but it just states reflecting different statutes that are out there, but basically saying that, the district's basically what our goals and expectations are. And there's bullet points about academic skills and knowledge, vocational skills, citizenship, personal development, and so on. And it's basically a statement reflecting statutes of what we hope to accomplish with our students. In short, it's not a required policy. We don't have to have it. But the laws that it reflects are required, so we're required to do those things. If you look at what it says we do, it's just what we do. We educate kids, we provide co-curriculars, we provide job opportunities, job training. So we have not had this policy, and I don't think it's harmed us to not have it. But one thing that I did note too, that it is mentioned in, I lost my spot here now.
6610.
Thank you. Policy 6610, which is we passed this summer, which is called non-district supported student activity accounts. It is referenced in there. So I think that was why I'm remembering now when Mr. Cerny and I were sitting down going through this, he said, well, he looked at it, he's like, well, it does reference it in there. So that's why we could include it. So I think it's not vital either way, probably. I don't think it harms anything to have that policy in place. I also don't think that it would harm anything to not have it. So I don't know what kind of questions or discussion you might want to.
The only thing it would be nice about is if, you see some of the issues that are happening in neighboring districts where it's like, this is not an outcome of the school. This is not, it's nice to have a policy that says, yes, this is, or no, this isn't.
This is what we do. This is not what we do.
There's a policy that says, yes, we're within the scope of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is all based on statute that says we have to do this, that is a nice thing to be able to reference back to use as an educational piece, is why we have, let's say, health education as part of our curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Why civics is required as part of the curriculum. That's my only thing from being able to explain why we're doing what we're doing, and why we wouldn't maybe decide on some of these course adoptions as they come forward.
Right.
It could be a tool.
Sure. Or if someone were to come forward and say, why isn't the school doing this?
Yes.
We could say, well, it's really not part of the scope of what our mission is, or what our charge is to do legally.
I don't know how anybody else, but it sometimes when you have to explain it, it's nice to have policy. And this is better than referring them back to a statute that's not user-friendly.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, any other discussion on that one? The other one, and we can come back to that certainly before you approve anything. The other one was animals on district property. Just asked for a little deeper explanation of that. And again, we don't have currently a policy like that. And I guess I would encourage us to have this policy because it gives some definitions. And we've had those questions come up before about, and even the board last time asked, what about people bringing dogs or bringing animals or bringing pets in different situations? How do we handle that? And we haven't really had a clear policy, and I do think that this gives us a nice clear policy about that. It gives nice definitions, differences between service animals, emotional support animals, and therapy dogs, and then it goes on to say that an emotional support animal is not something that we have to allow.
Mm-hmm.
Defines what it is and what it isn't, and then says we don't have to do it. But a therapy dog, it defines what it is and gives some parameters for it. Every time, every once in a while that comes up. What about therapy dogs? And we just don't really have any rules for it, and this would give some guidelines to say what should be in place to do it, and again, give some nice guidelines on service animals. It's a good reminder for us, I think a good policy for us to lean on when we do have a question come up about, well, I have a service animal, can it do this or can we do that? How about riding on the bus? Or how, it addresses all those different things about transportation and so on. And when we went through it, we made sure that it also reflected our current practices, like with pet visiting. We've had, again, elementary students, for example, can bring a pet to school for show and tell day, for lack of a better term. They don't call it exactly that, but we've had a process in place to get permission to be able to do that, and so we made sure to include that kind of stuff in there. So, and by adopting the policy doesn't mean that we instantly have any of these things. It just gives us guidelines for if that question comes forward. Like, now we have something to, we have some guidelines to follow, which I think is good.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other. Like I said, I felt like I wasn't really. The last meeting, I didn't feel like I was very prepared to talk about that policy as much as I wanted to be. So.
Well, I think we also squirreled when we were reading it too to be fair.
So, any other
Any other
questions for me,
questions?
or?
I'm good.
Are we ready for approval? All right.
Sure.
I need a motion.
I move to approve policy 2131, 2430, 5330, 5430, 5460, 561003, and 8390.
Do I have a second?
No, we're not doing that
No.
one.
Do I have
I'll
a
second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Peterson, would you like to give us some superintendent's notes at this fine hour?
Try to be quick too. I want to note the board recognition that all of you received from WASB. Just publicly note that our board members take part in professional development and have experience on the board, and I believe those are the ways that these different award levels are achieved. But all 5 of our board members received a recognition from WASB for that. So we talked quite a bit about elementary doing Ames Web assessments for the first time. That was a big deal since our last meeting in January. So a lot of credit to the staff, but also to Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Gillick for a lot of the hard work that they've done to really lead that change. That's been a big deal. Fastbridge and CERT at the high school, of course. Mr. Melberg always coordinates a nice activity or field trip to go along with that. Elementary school had their spelling bee in the last month. We, of course, had the turnover of a quarter and in-service day back in January. We did have a cold day. We had our first closure of the year. We do not need to make that up, too. So that's one thing. We don't need to make up that cold day. Talked about the convention. We had Spirit Week here at the junior-senior high school, and we're able to burn that bonfire that's been sitting there since homecoming, so that was nice. It was dry, yeah. Our fire alarm project at the high school is now complete, and so last Thursday I actually had our first drill and ran it. It's now a voice telling you what to do instead of a loud buzzer or whatever, so that's kind of nice. On February 2nd, there was a fundraiser held. There was a professional wrestling event held on Sunday, and all the profits for that were donated to our athletic department. So that was a nice event and a great event, and a big thank you to the organizers. And Jeremy Gatsky was a big leader of that, and so $2,200 that they donated to our athletic department. So we had 4K and early childhood screening last week, Thursday, Friday. We had conference wrestling tournaments last Saturday. Sports are rolling along. Basketball team's getting down to the end of their seasons here, regular season. Our technology committee's been talking about AI policies, topic of conversation here tonight. Next week is FCCLA week. We've got in-service days coming up. This Friday is a flex in-service day for staff, and then Monday is a regular in-service day where everybody will be here for sure. Junior high solo and ensembles coming up next week on the 20th. We've got Read Across America at the elementary school in the first week of March. April 3rd, just for all of you as board members, we'll talk about this more, and I can email out more information, but they will have that joint event between boards and superintendents at CISA 11 that we went to last year. April 3rd, that's going to be. So lining up a good speaker for that again this year. Looking ahead to future agendas, we'll have some more Neola policies. I believe FCCLA is going to come for Spotlight and Ed next month. We got dual credit approvals. We'll talk a little bit about school perception surveys and what direction the board wants to go with that this spring, and we'll probably have our CISA contract for services for next year already. We're talking about next year planning, so a lot of stuff going on.
All right, that moves us right along into our contemplated closed session. So our contemplated closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851C and 19.851E, the board will deliberate or negotiate the purchase of services, consider a staff request for a leave of absence, and review. Oh, we're not going to review the district administrator's evaluation. Table that to the next meeting. I will poll the board. Nettie?
Yep.
Yes. Corey.
Like, name's not coming today. Matt, you gotta turn those around for me. Christy, yes.
We are closed? All right. We're in closed?
We are in closed.
Okay, it's recording now.
All right, we are back in open session. So we have another resignation from Shauna Peterson that we need an approval.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Second is the approval of our property, liability, and workers' compensation insurance renewal. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the lead home EMC renewal.
All right.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Moving on to future agenda items.
Um,
I listed off a few in my notes too, so.
Yep.
Okay.
ETS updates and AI next steps.
Okay.
Looking at policies.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right, and then moving to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned.